A SEAL team vanished without a trace. The jungle gave no answers, and no one was coming. But hundreds of miles away, in a forgotten hangar, an old radar beeped. A signal only one person would ever hear. A retired pilot. A battle-scarred dog. And a final mission no one authorized. She flew with no orders, fought with no backup, and disappeared like she was never real. What happened next will challenge everything you think you know about loyalty, survival, and unfinished war. Welcome to Life Moral Tales. This is When a SEAL Team Vanished, One Forgotten Pilot Took Off One Last Time. When a SEAL team vanished, no one expected help to arrive. Not from the mainland. Not from command. And certainly not from a woman who hadn't flown in over a decade. But Captain Delaney came anyway. Not because someone told her to. Not because it was her job. She returned because once, years ago, someone saved her. And now, it was her turn to repay that debt. This is a story about unseen loyalty. The kind that lasts beyond missions, beyond military service, even beyond death. A story where a forgotten pilot, a scarred combat dog, and two dying men on an island remind us of the deepest kind of courage. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. In a world full of noise, recognition, and ego, this story whispers something far more powerful. When duty is real, you don't need to be remembered. You just take off one last time. Dash, 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 dash. Speech balloon. Do you believe some people are born to answer a call, even after the world forgets them? Speech balloon. Would you fly into danger for someone you never met? Let us know in the comments below. And if, when a SEAL team vanished, one forgotten pilot took off one last time, gave you chills. Just wait until tomorrow's story, where a woman receives a voicemail from her husband, 2 days after his funeral. So before you disappear like Delaney, checkmark, tap like, checkmark, subscribe to Life Moral Tales, checkmark, and turn on that notification bell, because the next ghost is already calling. Some legends don't fade. They just wait for the right signal. It started like any other mission. 6 members of SEAL Team Echo 9 soared above the Pacific Ocean in a battered recon aircraft. The objective was simple: covert surveillance over disputed waters near an uncharted island cluster. No firepower, no ground engagement, just eyes in the sky. But then, lightning. A freak electrical storm erupted with no warning. The aircraft's navigation went haywire. One engine burst into flames. The onboard system spiraled out of control. "We're going down!" someone screamed over the roar. Within minutes, the plane plunged into a thick jungle canopy on a nameless island that didn't appear on any map. It was a miracle no one died on impact. But that was the last good news they would get. Trapped, injured, alone. The aircraft's radio was crushed beyond use. The backup comms failed to transmit. Supplies were minimal, and worst of all, something didn't feel right. It wasn't just the eerie silence that covered the island like a shroud. It wasn't just the fact that compasses spun in circles and GPS refused to function. It was the eyes they could feel, watching from somewhere deep in the trees. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Chief Petty Officer Ray Dawson, team leader and decorated combat strategist, was the first to voice what everyone felt. "This place ain't natural," he muttered as he scanned the jungle with rifle in hand. Within 24 hours, strange things began to happen. Private Miller, the youngest on the team, spotted giant tracks in the mud, serpentine wide enough to swallow a truck. At first, everyone thought it was just stress. Jungle hallucinations. Until they found the remains. A wild boar, torn open, bones crushed, no blood left in the body. Then they heard it. At night, when the wind died down, a deep, guttural hissing noise echoed through the trees. Something massive slithered just beyond the firelight, brushing against branches and rocks with the weight of a small train. Dawson issued new orders. 2 men on watch at all times, weapons loaded. No one ventures out alone. But no protocol could prepare them for what was coming. On the 3rd night, Petty Officer Collins didn't return from his patrol. His body was never found. Only a shredded piece of his uniform, and drag marks leading into the dark. The team's morale crumbled. And just as despair started to creep in, a flicker of hope emerged. Sergeant Leandro Fix-It-Reyes, the team's tech specialist, discovered a shattered communications rig among the plane wreckage. With enough makeshift wiring, he believed he could send out a low-frequency burst, an old-school, Morse-based signal, barely enough to reach any outdated receivers. But it would take time, and time on this island was a luxury they couldn't afford. What they didn't know was that somewhere, far away, in a dusty hangar of a forgotten U.S. airfield, a receiver blinked alive for the first time in years. And someone answered. The island never slept. Not in the way normal places do, where the chirping of insects and rustling of leaves lull you into thinking the world is at peace. This island had its own pulse, one that felt almost sentient. After Collins disappeared, no one said it out loud, but every man on SEAL Team Echo 9 began to feel the same thing. They were being hunted. Ray Dawson, seasoned as he was, tried to keep morale steady. We stick to patrol pairs, short ranges only, no lone movements. But even discipline has its limits when you're exhausted, dehydrated, and terrified. It was Reyes who first caught sight of it. 2 days after Collins vanished, Reyes had wandered slightly off track, scavenging metal scraps for the comms rig. As he bent down to pull out a twisted antenna from the brush, he heard it, the same sound they'd all begun to dread, a low, grating hiss not far from his left. He froze. Branches cracked. Leaves shivered. Then a massive shadow slithered past the tree line. He couldn't see its head, couldn't tell how long it was, but the thickness of its body alone was wider than his torso. The thing moved with unnatural smoothness, as if gravity had no hold over it. Reyes backed away slowly, breath caught in his throat. When he returned to camp pale and trembling, he didn't have to say anything. They all knew. The beast was real. By that night, fear had sunk its teeth into the entire team. Their campfire burned brighter than usual. The men slept in shifts, rifles clutched tight, their backs against the fuselage of the wrecked plane. It didn't matter. The creature came anyway. At precisely 2:14 a.m., something hit the camp perimeter. Hard. The jungle erupted with noise. Screaming birds, falling branches, a roar of disturbed wildlife. Then silence. Not a natural, peaceful silence, but a vacuum, as if the island itself was holding its breath. Then they heard it. A rasping, rhythmic thump, like something dragging its colossal mass across the forest floor. It was getting closer. And then they saw it. Just beyond the glow of the fire, eyes. Not glowing, not cartoonishly bright, just dark, unblinking pits reflecting the firelight with an eerie glint. The beast hovered there, just outside clear sight. Studying them, Ray raised his rifle. "Hold your fire," he whispered. "It's watching. It wants us to panic." But Private Miller didn't listen. A young recruit with too much adrenaline and too little fear, he broke formation and fired. 3 loud bursts. Crack, crack, crack. Then the jungle exploded. The thing moved like liquid death. Thick coils tearing through underbrush, knocking over trees as if they were twigs. It lunged into the firelight for the first time, and that's when they saw it. A python, no, a monster, easily over 30 feet long, its scales jagged and scarred like ancient armor. The head was wide, flat, with fangs like obsidian blades. Its body coiled in and out of the light, fast enough to blur, heavy enough to shake the earth. Miller barely had time to scream. The snake wrapped around him in a fraction of a second, lifting him into the air like a rag doll. The sound of bones cracking echoed through the night. The team opened fire. Bullets tore through the jungle, sparks flew, but the creature retreated into the darkness with terrifying speed, Miller still in its grip. Ray called out. No answer. The fire sputtered. And just like that, it was gone. By sunrise, they found what was left. Miller's helmet and a deep furrow in the ground where the creature had dragged him. Private Jennings vomited, not from gore, there wasn't any, but from the realization that they were prey. Not soldiers, not even men, just meat on a forgotten island and something else's hunting ground. Ray gathered them. "We're not dying here," he said, voice low, steady. "This thing bleeds. It avoids fire. And it's not invincible." Reyes held up the partially functioning radio. "If I can get this working, someone might hear us. Might." Ray nodded. "Then get to it. The rest of you? We're building traps. We're drawing it out. If we're going down fighting." No one cheered. No one smiled. But for the first time since they crashed, there was something in their eyes. Not fear. Focus. Day 4. What had begun as a standard surveillance mission had now devolved into primal survival. The once confident Echo 9 was a fractured unit. After Collins and Miller vanished, one confirmed dead, the other most likely gone, there was a cold stillness in camp. No jokes, no banter. Just men checking ammo and whispering their final wishes in case the beast returned. Ray Dawson, ever the anchor, took it upon himself to patrol alone. His logic was clear. Better he take the risk than send another man to die. But inside, guilt gnawed at him. He was the one who picked Miller for this mission, a kid barely out of training, dead because of a rookie trigger pull. "We trained to kill, but nothing trained us for this," he murmured to himself as he walked the edge of the jungle, eyes scanning for any movement. Back at the wreckage, Reyes worked tirelessly on the makeshift transmitter. Using parts scavenged from the plane's defibrillator, a melted drone battery, and the internal wiring from Jennings' night vision goggles, he crafted a crude but potentially functional burst signal transmitter. The device had only one chance. "It'll send out a ping on Cold War emergency frequencies," Reyes explained, wiping sweat from his brow. "Only an old military receiver would even recognize it." "And if no one's listening?" asked Simmons, the quietest member of the group. Reyes didn't answer. Water had become a bigger threat than the creature. Their purifier was damaged in the crash. They were boiling what little they could find, but the creek nearby was dwindling. The heat was relentless. Tempers flared. Private Jennings broke first. He lashed out at Simmons after a tense argument about rationing. It wasn't about water, it was fear, boiling over. Dawson separated them, but the damage was done. That night, the jungle trembled again. This time, the creature didn't strike. It just made itself known. Hissing, circling the camp, dragging its enormous body against the outer perimeter, playing with them. "We're not its prey," Jennings whispered, eyes wide. "We're its entertainment." By the 6th day, Simmons collapsed from dehydration. He'd been hiding his symptoms: pale skin, dry mouth, shaky hands. When they finally noticed, it was almost too late. Dawson forced a hydration IV into him, using salvaged supplies from the medkit. But they were down to their last 2 bags. "We lose one more man, we won't have enough hands to hold rifles," Ray said, staring into the distance. That night, he found Reyes sitting alone, holding something in his hands. A photo. Reyes' daughter, maybe 7 or 8 years old. "She doesn't even know what I do for real," Reyes said, his voice cracking for the first time. "I told her I fix planes. She thinks I'm a mechanic." Reyes sat beside him in silence. "We're not dying here," he repeated, but now it sounded like a plea. On the 7th day, the jungle gave them something unexpected. Remains. Not human, but old military gear. Rusted canteens, a decomposed SATCOM radio, and a tattered patch with a faded emblem, USAF Rescue Division. And next to it, claw marks. Deep. Inhuman. Reyes examined the SATCOM. This could be older than 20 years, maybe more. This isn't the first time the military's been here. Dawson pieced it together. Someone came here before us. Maybe even knew about this thing. Maybe tried to kill it. Jennings, still unstable, laughed bitterly. Then they failed. The morale boost didn't come from a discovery. It came from the sky. At precisely 3:06 p.m., Reyes' transmitter beeped. Once. The burst signal had been sent. They didn't know if it was received. They didn't care. Hope was back on the table. But the jungle wasn't done punishing them. That night, the creature returned. This time, it didn't hesitate. It struck fast, ambushing Simmons and Jennings while they collected firewood 50 yards from camp. Simmons screamed, but his voice was cut off mid-breath. Jennings fired wildly into the dark as coils wrapped around his legs. Ray and Reyes sprinted in, shooting flare rounds into the jungle. The light revealed the beast's massive form, scales glinting red, its head now visibly scarred from previous encounters, maybe even bullets from decades ago. Ray got a clear shot. He fired, a direct hit to the eye. The creature recoiled, thrashing violently, hurling Jennings' limp body across the jungle floor before disappearing again. 2 more gone. Reyes stood there, trembling, whispering, "It's learning." Ray dragged Jennings' body back to camp, the man somehow still breathing, but barely. His ribs were shattered, internal bleeding obvious. He wasn't going to make it. That night, they didn't bury him. They sat beside him, listened as he muttered names. His mother, a brother, maybe a dog he once had, before his voice faded forever. 3 men left. Ray, Reyes, and Jennings, corpse cooling by the fire. Their only chance now was that someone heard the signal, and that whoever was coming would arrive before the monster did again. Half a world away, on the mainland, somewhere in Nevada, a forgotten U.S. Air Force hangar flickered back to life for the first time in over a decade. Dust hung thick in the air. Rows of grounded aircraft sat like museum relics. A single radar console in the corner blinked unexpectedly, then beeped. A low-frequency Morse burst. Old protocol, Cold War emergency band. No one was supposed to be listening, but someone was. Captain Morgan Ghost Delaney sat in silence, staring at the screen. 53 years old, silver hair, sharp eyes. Once the youngest female combat pilot in Air Force history. Now a ghost in her own right, unofficially retired, officially classified. Most thought she was dead. Some swore she was a myth. But the government still paid her. And she still had the keys to one thing no one else did. A 1970s-era A-10 Thunderbolt, long decommissioned but lovingly maintained in secret by Delaney herself. When the signal came through, she didn't question it. She simply stood, walked over to a small steel crate in the corner, and opened it. Inside lay a vest marked K9 SPEC, a patch reading DAX, and a dog tag. "Come on, old man," she whispered. From the shadows, a Belgian Malinois padded forward, gray around the muzzle, scarred on his left flank. His eyes were still sharp, piercing. Delaney strapped the vest on him, pulled open the hangar doors, and uncovered the Warthog. The bird hadn't flown in years, but it would tonight. Within hours, the A-10 tore through the sky like a ghost reborn. No flight plan, no call sign. Just a mission. Delaney didn't talk much. She didn't need to. She and Dax had flown dozens of ops together, most off the books. He sat quietly beside her in the cockpit, helmeted, alert. His presence was steadying. Below, in the open ocean, satellite data confirmed something else. Unusual thermal signatures on a supposedly uninhabited island. Predator activity? No. Something colder. Heavier. Delaney adjusted course. "Hang on," she muttered to Dax. "We're going off-grid." On the island, Reyes and Dawson were down to their last hope. They buried Jennings at first light, using a combat knife and helmet to dig the hard-packed soil. Neither man said a word during the process. Then they heard it. A low rumble. At first, they thought it was thunder, but the sky was clear. Then the rumble became a roar, growing louder, closer. They looked up and saw it. The A-10. Like a demon from an old war movie, it circled once, then dropped altitude with shocking precision. Its engines screamed over the jungle as it began a tight landing maneuver on a flat section of beach. An impossible feat for most, but Delaney wasn't most pilots. The aircraft touched down in a spray of sand and engine heat. As the cockpit opened, 2 things stepped out. By a woman in black tactical gear, not a single insignia on her uniform, and a gray-faced dog wearing a military vest with a red cross and faded American flag. I raised his rifle. Delaney raised one brow. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be in pieces," she said, voice like sandpaper. Reyes stared. "Who the hell are you?" Delaney didn't answer. She just pulled a duffel off the jet, opened it, and tossed a fresh medkit at his feet. Dax approached cautiously. Ray watched the dog, unsure, until Dax sniffed his leg, circled once, then sat beside him. "You've got maybe one night left," Delaney said. "Whatever's out here is not natural. You boys stirred up something that was supposed to stay buried." Reyes whispered, "You know what it is, don't you?" Delaney finally looked at him. "I've seen it before, once. Afghanistan, 2004. Only 2 of us made it out." She didn't explain further. Just loaded ammo onto a utility belt and pointed to the jungle. "If you want to survive this, we hunt it tonight." That evening, under the dying sun, a plan was forged. They would use fire as bait, noise as lure, and Delaney's knowledge of how the creature moved, fast in straight lines but slower in corners, to set a trap. Dax would run distraction. Reyes would operate what was left of the radar jamming tech to blind the creature's sense of vibration. Ray would take the shot, one he'd been saving, a single anti-material round, salvaged from the plane's emergency armory. It was risky, but they had no other choice. And no more time. At dusk, the jungle trembled again. The final showdown was coming. The jungle held its breath. Dawson, Reyes, Delaney, and Dax moved like shadows between the trees. Every step was deliberate, every rustle calculated. This wasn't war. This was chess, with death. They reached the clearing Reyes had selected, an open patch of broken earth surrounded by thick roots and natural choke points, perfect for trapping something too big to maneuver quickly. At the center, a pile of burning debris from the wrecked aircraft, a beacon. Delaney clicked her earpiece. 10 minutes, that's all we've got before it gets too dark to see. Light it up. Reyes activated the modified radar scrambler, a repurposed aircraft jammer wired to send out low-frequency pulses. The creature relied on vibration. This would confuse it, maybe even blind it. Then, silence. Even the birds stopped singing. And that's when they heard it. A low, echoing hiss. Not angry, not panicked. Confident. It was coming. Dax was the first to move. Delaney gave a hand signal, and the old Malinois darted into the trees, a red strobe blinking on his vest. His mission: flush the beast from the underbrush, force it toward the clearing. Seconds passed. Then, snapping branches, violent thrashing, and then, Dax appeared, sprinting from the jungle's edge at full speed. Right behind him, the creature, 30 feet of muscle, scale, and nightmare. Its mouth opened, rows of black fangs. Its eyes glinted with hate. Its massive coils tore through trees like paper. It didn't slither anymore, it charged. Delaney stepped forward, raised the flare gun, and fired into its face. A burst of blinding red light stopped it for half a second. That's all Dawson needed. From the tree line, he dropped to one knee, a long-barreled rifle balanced on a makeshift tripod. One shot. One chance. He held his breath. Squeezed the trigger. Boom. The anti-material round hit the creature dead in the center of its head. It staggered, not dead. Bleeding, roaring, wounded. It crashed into the clearing, flailing in fury. Reyes shouted, "Move! Second position!" They scattered. The creature coiled violently, slamming into trees, dragging its body toward Reyes. Dax bit down on its tail, pulling with all his strength. The beast turned, furious. Delaney drew her sidearm, fired 5 rounds into its exposed side. Scales shattered. But not enough. Then it lunged, straight at Ray. Time slowed. Ray tried to dive, but his leg caught on a tree root. The beast closed in. And then, Dax. He leaped between Ray and the snake, catching the full impact. The dog's body hit the ground hard, motionless. Ray screamed. Delaney's face twisted in fury. She pulled the emergency detonation switch on her belt. It triggered the final trap. Explosives Reyes had planted around the clearing erupted. Concussive blasts tearing through the jungle, throwing dirt, fire, and fragments into the air. The creature shrieked. One final roar, piercing and guttural. Then, silence. Smoke. Ash! Flames crackling. The monster's body twitched, then went still. Delaney limped forward, pistol raised. One last shot, straight into its brain. The beast's eye closed forever. Reyes collapsed to his knees. "It's over." Ray didn't speak. He knelt beside Dax, brushing the ash off the old dog's vest. "He saved me," he whispered. Delaney said nothing. She simply reached down and placed her hand on Dax's chest. Still breathing, barely. "Good boy," she said softly. Then, without a word, she pulled out a tiny vial from her belt and injected him. Experimental stimulant, not FDA approved. But Dax twitched, whimpered. Alive. Morning came fast. The jungle felt different, lighter, as if it had released something it had held captive for decades. As Ray and Reyes prepared the wounded dog for airlift, Delaney stepped away. She walked back to her A-10 silent. Ray caught up. "You're not staying for evac?" She looked back once. This wasn't about medals, it was about debt. Ray frowned. "To who?" Delaney opened the cockpit. "To a man who saved me from that thing back in '04. I couldn't save him, but I could save you." Ray wanted to ask more, but something told him this was her way. She climbed into the cockpit. Dax, now bandaged, jumped in beside her. Engines ignited. The Thunderbolt roared back to life. And before the evac chopper arrived, she was gone. Dash, 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 dash. The evac helicopter arrived an hour after Delaney vanished. By then, the jungle had already reclaimed the battlefield. Vines curled over fragments of the creature's corpse. Insects returned to the trees, and the oppressive tension in the air seemed to dissolve with the morning sun. Reyes was the first to spot the inbound chopper. He fired a flare. Ray Dawson stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the sky, not for the rescue bird, but for something else. She was gone. Of course she was. No call sign, no radar trace, no official flight log. Delaney and her dog had come like ghosts and left the same way. Back on the mainland, the military debrief was swift and cold. The official report stated mechanical failure, hostile wildlife, and survival protocol. There was no mention of a 30-foot predator. No mention of a classified A-10 pilot long thought dead. And certainly no mention of a war dog that had been discharged nearly 10 years ago. The brass swept it clean. Reyes was reassigned to base duty. Ray was offered early retirement with full honors. They took it, but they didn't forget. 3 months later, Reyes sent Ray a package. Inside was a small metal tag. Worn. Bent. The name, Dax. The return address was scribbled, barely legible. A post office box in Colorado. Untraceable. Ray hung the tag on a chain around his neck. He never took it off again. A year passed. Ray Dawson wrote a book. He called it Ghost Thunder. He pitched it as fiction, a military thriller inspired by survival stories. The publisher called it too far-fetched. They passed. Ray didn't care. He published it himself. The book gained traction online. Veterans swore it felt real. Dog handlers shared it in forums. Pilots whispered about the A-10 that flew missions off the books. Conspiracy threads exploded with theories. But no one could prove anything. The government denied it all. When asked about the story at a local VFW event, Ray simply smiled and said, "Some truths live better in fiction." Reyes opened a repair shop in Arizona. Never touched another transmitter again. But in his garage, among broken drones and rusted radios, he kept one shelf perfectly clean. On it, a photo of ECH-09. All 6 men, including Collins, Jennings, Simmons, and Miller. All smiling. All whole. Next to it, a small, framed quote. "They didn't die screaming. They died standing. That's what matters." As for Delaney and Dax, some say they were spotted once more, near an airfield in Alaska. A fisherman claimed he saw a gray A-10 fly low over the bay. No insignia, no tail number, just a ghost in the sky. Others swear Dax was seen in a VA hospital, walking beside a young amputee, guiding him down a hallway as if he knew the place. Ray never tried to find them. He knew better. Some warriors don't need to be remembered. They just need to be honored. Final voiceover for video ending. There are battles the world will never hear about, victories that won't make the news. But for the men who survived that island, and the ghost who saved them, no headlines were needed. Just silence. And a dog tag that never stopped shining. Bank. When a SEAL team vanished, no one expected help to arrive. Not from the mainland. Not from command. And certainly not from a woman who hadn't flown in over a decade. But Captain Delaney came anyway. Not because someone told her to. Not because it was her job. She returned because once, years ago, someone saved her. And now it was her turn to repay that debt. This is a story about unseen loyalty. The kind that lasts beyond missions, beyond military service, even beyond death. A story where a forgotten pilot, a scarred combat dog, and two dying men on an island remind us of the deepest kind of courage. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. In a world full of noise, recognition, and ego, this story whispers something far more powerful. When duty is real, you don't need to be remembered. You just take off one last time. Speech balloon. Do you believe some people are born to answer a call even after the world forgets them? Speech balloon. Would you fly into danger for someone you never met? Let us know in the comments below. And if, when a SEAL team vanished, one forgotten pilot took off one last time gave you chills, just wait until tomorrow's story, where a woman receives a voicemail from her husband 2 days after his funeral. So before you disappear like Delaney, checkmark, tap like, checkmark, subscribe to Life Moral Tales, checkmark, and turn on that notification bell, because the next ghost is already calling. Some legends don't fade. They just wait for the right signal.